introduce yourself real quick, Tom?
Tom Cook, a retired professor at OSU and turf program. Out at Washington State University, got a degree in agronomy and soils in 1972. Went back to the University of Rhode Island, got a master's degree there in 1975. And then I came back to the Northwest and worked at Puyallup at the research station with Roy Goss, and spent 2.5 years there. Came down to OSU, and I spent 31 years teaching in the turf and landscape program.
Cool.
So long, lawns were the bad guy. You know, they were everybody hated lawns, but the reality is that they're there, and the key is to figure out ways to have functional lawns, and also to change our expectations. It doesn't have to look like a putting green. And then just, I always tell people it's the best place to look at the lawn is across the street, you know, because that's the view that most people have of your lawn. You know, I look in the backyard, and from the window where I stand there and take my pictures, it looks like a 10. If I stood right on it and I was rating plots at the farm, I'd give it a 3, you know. But that's the problem, is we have this research farm mentality in terms of our expectations, when in reality it just has to look good at a glance. You know, realistically, you walk on the lawn and you mow it. It's over. You just gotta have it perfect at all times. Well, yeah, I don't tell him that, but but I know those people, and you know, and there are, but the number of lawn nuts in Corvallis is probably 10. You know, go to Portland, there's quite a few more, but we're only in the rich, you know, high rent district. I used to work with a woman in Seattle. She had 3 acres. She had over 50,000 square feet of turf, and the amount of shade was about the same as it is in your hall closet. I mean, it's just incredible. No way you could grow anything there, but she wanted grass. In fact, the first time I consulted with her, I said, well, here's what I would suggest you do. You're in the middle of a fir forest, plus redwoods and everything else that have been planted over the years. I said, I would just get rid of the lawn, go back to ferns and rhododendrons, and it'd be gorgeous. And then she wrote back and said, well, that's not why I hired you. So what we ended up doing there is every spring we replanted the lawn. We overseeded it, dethatched it, spent extraordinary amounts of money. And the grass would hang in there all summer long, and when winter came, it would just fall apart. So, you know,
have you had any success in convincing people that ripping out and then restarting every year is not the way to go? Like, have you ever converted anybody?
Oh, those people I don't even try. But I think in the commercial realm, you know, like my friend Bob Grover.
Now, what do you want to tell people about EcoLawns? What are we going to learn about EcoLawns today, do you think?
Well, I think there's sort of a philosophical aspect with that we need to abandon our vision of lawns as only a perfect stand of grass, and find ways to maintain functional lawns that look reasonably good and require fewer inputs. And to me, that means we've got to find a way to produce lawns that don't just include grass. There's, you know, the natural ecology of lawns is as time goes by, you get an increase in the number of species that grow in these things. And if we can find a way to accumulate the good guys, the ones that look good under mowing and maybe still flower and so on, then we can develop lawns that are functional, that look reasonably good, and require much fewer inputs. Thins out a little bit. So then I started overseeding with common white clover. You know, if you do the economics on it, you got micro clover they're selling for $30 to $40 a pound, and you got common white clover, which is $6 a pound. You can use a lot of common white clover, and that's what everybody has growing naturally, so it's well suited to lawns. So anyway, I just go in the fall and I overseed with that. And since that area was the hottest, driest area, that's the clover left earliest there. This has held in amazingly well, and I've been mowing it because I got a new lawnmower designed to cut kind of short. It's got 7 blades. I've been mowing it shorter than I normally do. And I didn't mow it for you guys, so I want you to see the flowers. For people that don't like the flowers, you just mow it. You know, the advantage of clover isn't the flowers, it's the nitrogen that fixes.
Could clover compete with other types of grass? Would it be possible to have an all clover lawn?
If no, the clover doesn't hold up by itself very well.
Okay,
Sorta
so you
needs-
need to have someone else there.
Sort of needs like what I think of as a matrix. Now, this was the irony. When we started working with the EcoLawn concept, we tested a whole bunch of grasses. So we tried bluegrass, Kentucky bluegrass, we tried tall fescue, we tried straight fine fescue, straight ryegrass, we tried mixtures, plus the flower component. And so what we found was the flowers did the best when they were with grasses that had a high fertility requirement.
A high what?
High fertility requirement. Because without lots of nitrogen,
Right.
bluegrass doesn't grow much. Ryegrass doesn't grow much. Things like fine fescue they just get denser and denser and denser. They didn't look very nice, but they would take over. So we sort of settled on a mix that had ryegrass base, and then you had your flowers. And the idea was that was the most compatible mixture. And all of our early stuff where we used Fresa, boy, it was just, they were gorgeous. Well, there's a long list of things you could put in there. The big issue is finding things that are commercially available. So when you do that, it winnows it down. The 2 stars, if you will, have been the clovers and the yarrow. And those are the most persistent and the most compatible, I think, with lawns. The lawn daisy was a wonderful idea, and I think it could work if we could simply get the native lawn daisies. They're rhizomatous, very persistent, but the ones that are in the flower trade are designed to have pretty flowers in the last 2 or 3 years, and that's about what they do. So if we could find a way to put seed from the native types in there, we could have a really persistent stand. And those 3 are the ones we started with. We tried chamomile. It didn't hold up. It's very nice and it smells really good. There are other clovers, but nothing that was available. Some of the veronicas would work very well, but again, none of these are available in the trade. So it's a pretty short list, even though the potential is there for many other things.
Okay.
All these lawnmowers. In my theory, it's kind of like books. I don't buy books to have them on my shelf. I like to read them. So with lawnmowers, I try to figure out a way to use them. So this is the Cadillac of old lawnmowers. It's the Scott Silent. And my friend Jim Ritchie told me that it actually was patented in the 1930s by Yardman. And then there's been variations on a theme. So Scott's had it for a long time. and then Craftsman had one for a long time, and then Yardman, of course, continued to have them. And then now there's a company in California called the Silent Mower, and they have a 5-blade and a 6-blade. This is a 6-blade, and it's perfect for northern grasses. And so I set this about 1.25 inches, and that's what I mow that one with. And then Fiskus came out with this, and to front throw, so it's actually remarkably easy to work with. So I wanted to use it, so I mow this one with it, but it has to be set lower. It just doesn't cut well when you set it up high. And so I mow this lawn with this guy, and then I use the big lawn with the Scott Silent. And but these sort of just go over the lawn, and they just sort of leave it all there. And so yeah, I love them. But the reality is that when I mow that, if I'm in a real big hurry, I go over it once. Normally I go over it twice. So the first time you're just cutting grass. The second time you just, you're kind of grooming it. And then in the old days when my mother-in-law would come down, I'd go over it 3 times. And and it looked like putting green, and she didn't care, but I did. So.
Talking to a homeowner, what are some of the, what's the top question a homeowner would ask you about lawn care?
Oh, what do I have to do to have a nice lawn, or how can I get rid of these weeds? Those okay. Are the big ones. And the answer is all the basics. I believe that we can do more with lawns with a lawnmower than we can with fertilizer or water. Even a brown lawn that's mowed regularly and looks clean looks nice. So there's the housekeeping part of lawn maintenance, which is mowing and edging, that sort of thing, which gives you a nice, crisp, uniform surface. And then there's the the agronomic side of it, what you've got growing there and how dark green it is and all that kind of stuff. So I usually try to get people to mow more regularly, and then if they've got an irrigation system, I want to see it run. And you can learn an awful lot about seeing it. Most people assume once they put it in the ground, it's just going to work perfect, and that's not the case. And I turn systems on. You got heads pointing in the wrong direction, heads that are plugged, heads that are broken, heads that don't turn, heads that turn too fast. So the maintenance aspect of irrigation systems is far more important than most people understand. Then you look for, I have a simple recipe for irrigation, and that is if you have an automated system, set it for what works empirically, and then look for ways to reduce the amount of water you use. So you can reduce it by irrigating fewer times a week, or by irrigating for a shorter period of time when you do water. And but that takes work, and you need to watch. I'm still a firm believer of using hoses and sprinklers, and I think you should feel the pain every time you water the lawn. You should be involved with the process. And the advantage of that is that you can water dry spots. And you can't really water dry spots with an irrigation system. You end up saturating everything else trying to get that one little spot. So you might as well just water the spot that's brown. And then you look for, the other thing is to figure out ways to shorten the season. So I try to wait as long as I can in the spring, and I try to turn it off as soon as I can in the fall. And you can save 4 or 5 irrigations just by doing that. So that becomes a significant amount of savings.
Okay.
And then fertilizer is simple. Don't fertilize any more than you absolutely have to basically to maintain density. You've got to get off the color wagon. And if you do that, then you can still have a nice lawn. I mean, I say this year I'm going to get it ready to irrigate in another week or so, and hopefully that's the last time I irrigate this year. It'll be 4 times. Okay? If I want it to look really good, I would irrigate 6 times. But in the old days, when I had this looking like a putting green, I was irrigating 12 to 16 times a year.
Once a month, basically.
Well, that was my idea, was I would do it once a month in June, July, August, September.
Yeah.
But the way it works out is I wait as long as I can into June, and then I irrigate. And then now we're moving into the longest days, some of the hottest weather. So then about 3 weeks later, and then sometimes then 2 weeks. But by then we're getting into mid-August and the days are shorter, and then I can stretch it. So you have to use a little judgment in order to.
How long do you irrigate for?
Well, I put down a good inch of water, maybe an inch and a half, and I soak it good. And then you've got this problem. When you irrigate regularly, you're basically keeping everything moist. You're just adding water. Because it's moist, it's easy to put water into it. If you let it dry out between irrigations, some of the areas get really dry and become almost hydrophobic.
Any other really common lawn homeowner mistakes that you can talk about?
Well, I think the weed issue is a big one, and it sort of goes hand in hand. If you quit watering your lawn, the lawn's going to thin out over time. Other things are going to move in, and as the weeds move in, then suddenly they can tolerate more drought than the grass. So we have a tendency for lawns to shift from mostly grass to mostly weeds simply because they weren't irrigated at all. And so then you got a problem. Now you got the weeds. If you want the lawn to look better, you have to get rid of the weeds. And at that stage, your only option basically is chemicals. And a lot of people want to get rid of them, but they don't want to use chemicals. And the reason they have the weeds is because they didn't irrigate, not to have a green lawn, but to have a functional lawn. And so, I guess what I often tell people is that even if you don't like your lawn and you don't want to have a lawn that's dark green, is that you need to irrigate it probably at least once a month during the summer, once every 3 weeks, and you can still have more green than brown. But you have to irrigate enough to keep the grasses alive so they can compete with the other plants. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of time fussing over weeds that you can't do anything with because you don't want to spray them.